Hey y'all, it's Mary Hyatt, and I'm so excited you're here for this month's topic, which is all about body wisdom. Our bodies are full of magic and wisdom if we can tune in and listen. This month, we'll be exploring how to create a more intimate connection with the unique language of our bodies and use it as a tool for deeper healing. So stay right here and let's hop into it.
Welcome to the Living Fully Alive podcast with Mary Hyatt, here to help you find your authentic voice, learn how to love yourself, and embrace your life. And now, your host, life and mindset coach, body love advocate, and doTERRA Presidential Diamond, Mary Hyatt.
Hey everybody, it is Mary, and I am hanging out with my part-time co-host, BFF Lindsley Brooks. Hey girl, hey.
Hey, good to be back.
I mean, this is kind of wild because I announced this last week, but this is the final month of season 2 of the podcast, and I'm going to be taking a 2-month little hiatus before coming back for season 3. But I think one of the things that I just want to acknowledge is that I created season 2 so that you would be my co-host. Like I stopped season 1 and was like, I have to have Lindsley. Cause I think we did like some random post or podcast episode together. And then it was like, oh, this is good.
Yep.
Like we need this like every month. And so I meant to go look and see how many episodes you've been on with me for season 2, but it's like a lot.
Yeah.
Like you were on the majority of all of them.
I'm honored.
This is the last one.
I'm so honored.
Well, it won't be the last one like forever, but the regularity of it, maybe we'll see. We'll see what we end up birthing up. What is that? What is this saying? You end up
Birthing coming
yeah,
out.
but what are we? I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, we'll figure out some other way of working together. But I'm glad that you're here for body wisdom because I feel like this is something that you and I talk a lot about. And last week I did sort of the foundational episode and kicked off the month with my 3 ways to honor your body's wisdom. And in that episode, if you haven't listened to it, go back and check it out because I get into the reasons why we've been disconnected from our body's wisdom, all the programming, specifically as children that we receive, that our bodies are either not to be trusted, they're broken, they're flawed, they're bad, they're sinful, whatever it might be. And I talk about how we can begin to repair that relationship with our body, learn its unique language, rebuild that trust, honor its limits. And it's a really, I think, a great episode to kind of start this conversation because everybody that I'm going to have on the podcast, including today's conversation with Lindsley, but even after that, we're going to look at this topic from different angles. So we're going to look at it like, I've got one guest, we're going to talk about it from a somatic perspective, when handling trauma. I'm going to talk about it from an emotional perspective with another guest. And then Lindsley and I today are going to talk about it from an energetic perspective. And I am so just like over the moon that we're taking it here because I feel like the energetic body is something that most people don't have a lot of familiarity around, like, especially if you are raised in Western culture, the concept of our body having energy, even what energy is, energy centers in the body and how that plays into our overall like body wisdom and how intelligent and how connected our bodies are. It's almost like we just like missed that part of our education. Like that chapter was ripped out from the book and we never got it. And it's unfortunate because it robs us of the whole picture holistically of how powerful our bodies are. So can we just dive like right into it? Can we just get straight into it? Okay. Yeah. You did such a good job, I think, of talking about like why it's so important to have this conversation about energy, and like what the value is, like, why do we even need to go here and talk about it? So will you just share a little bit about that kind of from maybe like a beginner's kind of level or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I'm so excited that you're like really and truly introducing everybody to this concept, right? This is the first time we've ever really talked about kind of like alternative medicines and some different approaches. And it really, you're right. It's like being raised in at least for me, and I know for you, in a Christian culture or a Western culture, it's not the norm to hear somebody even say energy medicine or the energy body. But essentially, I always just kind of like break it down to the idea of like, when you walk into a room, you can almost like feel when somebody's in a bad mood or if somebody's excited, like, it's like somebody's like, oh, I love your energy. Like we throw this word around, right? Like we talk about, that word a lot without it being some kind of spiritual term, or I guess it's very much connected to the new age world, or what you and I use,
right?
Like
totally.
woo woo, we've heard that word too, but essentially energy is the unseen, right? And it's really, when you break it down to just real basic science, and obviously neuroscience today, quantum physics, modern technology can now prove that there is like an energy, there's even like an aura or a resonance or some kind of field that actually is outside of the human body that a body puts off, right? And so without a shadow of a doubt, now we can measure that there is something called energy that is around a body, and that everything is vibrating at a certain frequency, and that everything is energy. And it doesn't even have to be some sort of spiritual connotation to it when you really break it down to basic science. And it shows like, no, there are cells that are vibrating, and there are things that you can actually measure how big somebody's energy field is. And when they walk into a room, sometimes you can actually feel it without seeing it. And so,
well, it's like, I was gonna say, like the best example of that, I think too, sometimes is like, have you ever had that feeling where like somebody's looking at you or somebody's staring at you, and they might be like behind you? It's like you don't have even your eyes on them, but you're like, or you just know, like this happens with Bentley and I all the time because we're so connected. I'll feel him before he even gets home. And then like a couple minutes later, he'll walk through the door, and I'm like, I knew you were about to walk in the door. Or like, I know this person is like, there's somebody staring at me, and you like turn around, and sure enough, like somebody's standing there, or somebody's looking at you, or like you just feel the energy presence of someone in your space. Like, I think that's a great example of exactly what you're talking about.
Well, and so because everything is energy, and just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? And there are people that are trained like you and I to actually be able to read energy or sense energy or feel energy. But to an untrained eye, you would just think, oh, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't exist. But, just because there's something like electricity out there and we can't see it doesn't mean that it's not happening, right? And also the fact that like this idea, it's called a subtle body in the energy and Eastern medicine. There's something called the subtle body. So you've got your physical body, you've got your emotional body, and then it's called the energy or subtle body. And it's obviously been primarily studied in the East. If you've ever heard of, Chinese medicine or acupuncture or things like that, they really focus on healing some of that. And so it is very much from an Eastern worldview, but it does not disqualify that energy is real just because it's not been taught here in the Western culture, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Right.
Right. And so, but what I was going to say is that because everything is energy, our human mind is no exception to that. And so we can put off electrical charges. We can put off almost like a magnetic charge, really, based on what we're thinking and what we're feeling. And it broadcasts some sort of unique energetic signature, essentially, out into the sphere, whether we can see it or not, right? And so a lot of times these frequencies that are going out, that are coming from us based on our thinking and our feelings, they're also affecting our well-being, right? And so if all that stuff is being broadcasted out, it's not only affecting those around us, it's also putting out some sort of magnetic energy that's drawing things to us, but it also is affecting us on an internal level. And so when you're to talk about the, wellness in your body, if you're wanting to live a holistic or a more healthy life, then you need to, there's an aspect of elevating your thoughts and your feelings, like you so eloquently teach all the time. And then you start realizing how much there's energy that flows in this body and in your field, when this is, and we'll get into kind of more on depth on what that means. But then when you start realizing that when this energy isn't in a state of health or in balance, or it's not flowing well, it can actually create a lot of disease in the body and disharmony in the body. So that I'll stop there and let you kind of take it from there.
No. And I'm grateful that you're like slowing down to take the time to kind of walk through this, because it isn't common knowledge for most people. Obviously, you and I have been trained in this, so it's like second nature to us now. But there was a time where I had no perception that was at play inside of my body. And so I might be experiencing certain symptoms in my body and no way be able to connect them to the fact that my energy was off in some way, that either I was being impacted by someone else's energy around me. Like, this is why I always talk about the power of the people that you're surrounding yourself with has such an impact on you, not because of necessarily, well, I should say, in addition to how people think and that having an influence on your own thoughts and their values and their worldview impacting the way you see the world. But even from an energy standpoint, like, we all know those people that, we would say in non-woo-woo terms, like they just suck my energy or they deplete me, like being around them, like exhausts me, or they deplete me, or they drain my battery or whatever. All of those terms and sayings and phrases are talking about the energetic body, the subtle body.
Yeah.
It's draining your life force, your energy, and it's basically causing interference, like a bad radio signal that is affecting how your whole body is operating as a whole from an energetic perspective. Yeah. And it is an impact when we think about wisdom, like our body's wisdom, like our body holding the answers, our body knowing already what it is that we need to come back into homeostasis. It is a way that our body communicates with us.
Yes.
Like, it is an active participant, I guess you could say. Like, it's always vibrating. There's a frequency. It's always communicating. And just like you can tune into different radio signals, like on a radio, an AM radio station or an FM radio station, you can actually tune in to the energies of the body, like stations on a radio, and receive information and get information. And all of those are connected throughout the body in different energy centers and different energy points. Yeah. And this goes back to Chinese medicine, like you mentioned. And so this is, thousands and thousands of years old, super, super ancient. And still people are using this method today, which is so beautiful. Yeah. So I want to talk about the energy centers. Yeah. And we should have talked about this, but are we going with the traditional energy centers, or are we going with Dr. Joe's energy centers?
No. Well, I love it. Can I go back to tag onto what you said?
Yeah, go for it.
Because what you're saying is so big. It's like the energy field that you're talking about, that subtle body, like so much of everything that kind of eventually shows up and manifests in the body starts in that energy field first, right?
Getting
And so, I was going to tell you, like, when you were saying how ancient this is, we're getting ready to talk about the energy centers of the body, but this system, it originated in India between 1500 and 500 BC. So, it's kind of like, wow. And I know, and I say this with all love and with my Christian tradition intact, because it was such a foreign concept to me. And I remember being raised to think that anything outside of what was biblical when it came to, ancient or Eastern or anything else, I just didn't even know what I didn't know. Right. But I think it's really important for us to kind of pause for a minute, because at least for me, I know that I was so kind of resistant to anything that was foreign, but I feel like we would be pretty hard pressed to find anything, especially medically or holistically, that can trace its roots to being purely biblical. And here's why. Right. The entire field of medicine in itself, Western medicine in itself, is rooted I'm sorry, y'all, brace yourself for what I'm about to say. But the whole, like the entire field of medicine is rooted in the worship of Greek gods. So like it's based on the Greek.
What?
Yes, it's based on like Greek philosophy. And so this, like it's kind of like as Christians, we don't need to villainize the practice of modern medicine just because these philosophical origins aren't based on biblical practices. So it's important. And I know I'm walking delicately, but it's important for us to just open our mind to the idea that there are ways of healing our bodies that may not like line up with what we think about things spiritually, but that it doesn't discount the importance and the value of that. It's like you can appreciate that someone is like a different culture values health and hear what they have to say and see how it could apply to you. Does that make sense? Is that okay that I said that?
No, I'm so glad. I'm really glad because I know that this can be controversial in the sense of, oh, is this in conflict with my belief system? And I think that we were definitely, I surely was taught that anything Eastern was like evil or mysterious, or like there was something about it that just like was scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's usually how it goes when we don't understand things or we don't have a reference point to it. It's like, you meet somebody who's raised completely different than you. It's like, oh, that must be crazy or bogus, but it's just because you're looking through the lens of your own worldview. And I think that this is something that, now, thank God we have the science to be able to prove what these traditions and cultures have known for centuries. We can look at that and go, okay, like you said, we can measure energy now. We can literally measure the hertz, the speed that our energy has, the width, the bandwidth of our own energy fields, like out on our sides in front of us. And there's machines that can see that and measure that and track it. And so, and this is true for any living thing, plants, animals, whatever. And to me, I think this is something that, like, when we get into the land of what could be considered woo-woo, I think for me, it has really bolstered, is that the right word? Like up my actual faith in an intelligent creator.
Yeah. Now
you can label that however you want, if that's God for you or, source or universe or whatever. But for me, it's like, our bodies are way too perfect and way too intelligent and like almost like the highest end machine that there ever existed. Like it's so beyond what any human brain can actually even fathom, like the intricacies, the intelligence, the connectedness, the way it communicates. Like when you really start getting into this, especially when you start getting into like neuroscience and the energy, how that's communicating through the cells, epigenetics, all this kind of stuff, your brain is like, it just gets blown. You're like, oh my God, my body is the most amazing thing I've ever witnessed.
Yes.
Like, and I don't even know a half of it. And so to me, that just like gives my faith even more proof that like there is something higher out there that has orchestrated all of this.
Yes. Yes. And
do you feel that way?
Absolutely. In fact, it's like, it makes my body this wisdom machine. It's like, of course, a loving God would make it that much more expansive, and being able to just like have everything speak to each other and connect to each other. And that if I'm showing up with some negative thinking, that of course it would manifest itself in my physical ailment, because it would need to get my attention. Of course, if my emotions and if I have stress, that I would start to get sick so that I could know how to balance it, right? Like, why wouldn't a loving universe give us warning signs to tell us that something is out of balance? Yeah. And that it doesn't 100%. Have to be such a, oh, look, I'm such a victim to this situation. It's like, no, this is a huge wake-up call from a very loving universe. If you allow it to see it that way, it's still scary. Yeah. It doesn't minimize that there's pain.
Oh, sure.
But it literally gives yourself an opportunity to just like, okay, there's something else going on in my life that needs to be addressed. Right. And to go.
Well, it's like a, No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, then that leads us straight into what you were talking about, being able to measure that. The fact that we can actually measure this stuff
Right.
now, and it doesn't have to be some kind of philosophical or spiritual or faith-based thing, that you can actually measure the meridian systems, the energy highway of the body, and that you can actually see how it flows, and that where it can be blocked now, and that and we'll get into this, but that there are little centers within the body where all these meridians intersect, like an interstate highway. Like, how cool is a God that made that,
I know. That's exactly. I was like, we literally are living inside of a roadmap that if we can learn its language, and if we slow down and pay attention and create communication inside of our bodies, it's like, oh my gosh, like I can remember just having that awareness of like, this thing is showing up. Like, let's say I had, I had strep throat, like over and over and over and over again. It's like, okay, what is my body trying to tell me? Why is this communicating to me in this way? What is this trying to say? And for me, I had so many years. This is like, I got strep right after I was divorced, like 3 or 4 times in a row. And, I had spent a decade of not using my voice. I had spent a decade of being silent, of being quiet, of playing small. And that center, my energy center of my throat, was basically like, it felt like I was ripping out the scar tissue that had sort of closed over all of my voice, my energy, my truth. And we'll talk about that here in a second when we get into the different centers. But it was like, there is such imbalance here in the way that I'm communicating, in how I'm speaking truth. There's a bacteria here inside of that, and you use that, metaphorically. It was like a no-brainer once I started understanding it from the standpoint of energy center, why that would have developed for my throat. And again, when I know that, then I have the opportunity to clear that energy and to meet the need that my body has, and to right the imbalance and bring myself back into alignment. But I have to have that awareness that there's something connected in my body with my mind and with my emotions and with my energy. But it's a roadmap, and I can follow that roadmap to the destination, and then go
straight to the source.
My body had the answers.
And to go straight to the source, because, and God bless Western medicine. We all need it. But most of the time they would have treated your strep throat with a bunch of antibiotics, and you would have just been totally, scratched, like putting a Band-Aid on the actual issue. And what I think is so powerful about having this knowledge, and to be able to study what it means to have, energy healing and energy medicine, is that you get to go to the root. And then you actually get to kind of address what you're saying, the emotional component to it, the history, the trauma, it's not even have to be something major or big. It can just be something that's been out of balance in your life for so long, that at what you and I know about how energy works, it started in the field first, and it took a while for it to actually physically manifest in a throat issue and have strep throat.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was delayed, and then it, got to show up. Totally. Yeah. Well, and this is why this is such a fascinating conversation, because we're going to get into how to use the body to heal and to gain new awareness, like somatically, how to use our emotional awareness to do that. But I want to get into the energy centers, because you and I, like I said, it's common knowledge for us. We're always like, oh, this is, this chakra or whatever. But I want to just touch on that word, because we're going to use that word, chakra. And will you just sort of explain? Because I feel like that can be a scary word, or it can be like, oh no, she's going into the land of woo-woo. But let's just slow that down a little bit, because we are going to be talking about the chakras, the energy centers. But will you talk about that so that we can kind of get our triggers taken care of?
and if that word freaks you out, you can call them energy centers, right? Like, you don't have to call them chakras. But the word chakra itself literally translates to spinning wheel. And so it does not actually refer to a physical structure in the body, but it's more about the swirling effects of the energy that is created in like these energetic intersections, like I was talking about. So we have life force, kind of like energy highways that are moving through our bodies, often called chi, or just energy. And when these kind of like road, like these energy things intersect, that's where these energy centers form. And so they literally create like a spinning effect, a swirling effect. And so that's kind of what we get, the spinning wheel, AKA the chakras. And in Western culture, we have 7 main energy centers or 7 main chakras. The deeper you get into this, the more, you can learn about. I've heard all the way up to 15, but because of just our Western culture here, that's the one that we're most knowledgeable on. And so within these chakras, or prana or chi, like I was saying, is pure healing energy, pure life force, beautiful energy. And the beauty is that every one of these regions, it corresponds with a specific organ, as well as physical, the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual states of your being. And it influences all of these areas of your life. And they're also developed at certain ages. Like if you've got some sort of childhood trauma, and we can break these down if you want to, but even just like a certain trauma at a certain age, there's an energetic imprint that happens in the subtle body. And it actually will kind of live in, remember, it's not a physical thing. It'll live in that certain energy center in your body. So it may be something that you just have to work through in this life, where it's just kind of like, one of those ailments or one of these lessons or one of these things, like you were talking about with your throat. Like for me too, throat chakra, it's like, it may be always a life lesson. That's okay though. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be healed or always out of alignment. That's the beauty. It's just you get to do this journey of balancing out these energy centers so that you can be healthy and vibrant and happy and healthy, right? So does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yeah. Well, and you get to the point, it's super helpful. And I think, the more that you and I have played with this, obviously we do energy work, we get energy work. You get really attuned to the different energies, and you can feel when one part of your centers are off or not. And you go, ooh, like this is out of whack. This is, stagnant or stuck. And oftentimes we will show what that is. Like when I watch people, when I'm coaching them, I notice when they're talking about an area of their life where they're feeling stuck, or an emotion that they're experiencing, something that feels really overwhelming to them, they will often touch the part of their body where that energetic imbalance resides. So like oftentimes, people will clench their throat, or kind of stroke their throat. Sometimes they'll put their hand on their heart, or they'll just say, I can feel it in my heart. Sometimes they'll kind of like clench their belly, talk about their belly. You'll start noticing all these ways that it's showing up, that imbalance is showing up. And these are all these little moments that are giving you clues. Oh, wait a second. I need to pay attention here to that subtle body that is out of balance and out of alignment. So let's walk through the 7 different ones, because I think it's helpful to understand, like you said, I mean, they hit on so many different areas of life. So this is like literally Lindsley and I were in a whole, what was it? A year-long study of this together.
Yeah.
And not to mention both being trained in different modalities for energy work and stuff. I mean, this is something that like we're going to cover lightly, that if this is like sounding interesting to you, there are so many beautiful resources, but it will take time to go into the depth, just like anything else. I mean, like we could just talk for hours and hours and hours.
Totally.
So from a simple kind of approach, let's talk about the first chakra, the root chakra. And will you just share a little bit about the qualities and what is showing up there in the root chakra?
So the root chakra, which also called Muladhara, I guess I'm saying that right. I never know how to say that. So it's down there. They call it the root because it has to do with our grounding. It has to do with it's right at the base of the spine. So the perineum, and very often it's associated with the color red, and it has to do with your sense of belonging and that deep, deep sense of I am. So it's like it's very connected to the element of earth. And so a lot of times I see that and this is so general, like we were saying, but a lot of times when we're feeling ungrounded, we use that word a lot, it's like, it's like, how do I ground myself? There's an aspect of kind of just connecting to the earth and remembering who you are. It's very tribal. It's very family oriented. So when you're feeling disconnected from your real family of origin, or if you've just moved recently, or if you don't really know if you're in transition, or, there's all sorts of everyday things that can make us feel ungrounded, right? Or make us feel like we don't belong. And so a lot of times that has to do with your first chakra being out of balance or needing to get in balance. I also associate it with a sense of direction. And it's like, if you notice people who are like, no matter where they are, they cannot figure out where left or right or east, or it's like no sense of direction. Totally. There is a first chakra or first energy center in balance. And so it's just really fascinating how this stuff starts to manifest itself, but it's also connected to your adrenals. It's also connected to your feet, your ankles, your legs. And when it's in health, I mean, obviously the opposite of all that it's like you have a real strong sense of self. You feel that you can take up space, you feel like you really belong. There's a stillness, there's a good health and a good comfort, so anything else?
I was going to say, like, just safety and security, like basic needs being met. If you think about, we talked about a couple months ago, like that core wounding, like to feel safe, like when it's out of balance, that fear of abandonment comes up, that fear of rejection comes up. There's a lot of that at play going on. I always think about this with like father energy, sort of like some that grounding kind of like a healthy masculine, stable, secure foundation. Like this really is the base for everything else above it being in balance. And when that is off, everything is shaky. It's like the ground shakes.
It's like a tree.
And so I was going to say, literally saying, this is the roots of the tree. 100%. Yep.
Yeah. And, even after like a major breakup or a major disruption to your normal life, anything that makes you feel secure, anytime it gets like rattled, we go into insecurity. Right. And so like, that's exactly what we mean. When you feel insecure, it's because that foundation has been kind of rattled, and there's a sense of safety where it's like, I don't know, like, if I can like trust that I am safe, like the divine still loves me, or that I still have a good plan for my life, or that my partner still wants me, or whatever, that's that first chakra energy. Yeah.
Yep. And I think that it's, outside of getting energy work done to help balance this, again, if we're talking about the frequencies, we're talking about our ability to actually have an impact on our energetic body. Some of the things that you can do are like going and really getting your feet in the ground, like earthing yourself, like finding that sense of balance inside the earth itself. So like I'll oftentimes, if I feel shaky like that, I'll take my shoes off and my socks off and go walk barefoot in the grass. Sometimes I'll put my stand and put my spine up against a tree and just sort of breathe into that tree and feel my feet below me, like kind of have a sense of being supported by the tree and its roots. Like all of these things, touching dirt, anything that's elemental, like from an earth perspective would be really great. Touching rocks, touching soil, gardening, playing in the mud, any of that kind of stuff, even going to do a mud bath. Those kinds of things are going to be really balancing to that chakra. And it's a good idea just for overall health to do some of those things regularly, but certainly when you're feeling off, like those are a few quick wins for that chakra.
I'll add one more and then we can move on. Something about preparing your own food and cutting real live whole foods. It's like something about just cooking your food in your home. It's very, very grounding. And I love what you're saying about the earth elements. Like even root vegetables probably would be good to eat. But I love what you're saying about, because it actually is so physical. The earth, it's like, it's very body oriented, right? So when we feel like this discombobulated in our root chakra, we don't even feel like we belong in our body. So I love that, like even getting a massage or like doing something that actually makes you have the tactile, reclaiming your right to be here, it's like, I belong here, that kind of energy. So,
and I'm glad that we spent a little bit more time on this one because it really is the foundation.
It is. Yeah.
We can kind of go through a little quicker for the other ones, but I think I'm glad we did that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
take us into the second sacral
I know. So help me say this. How do you say it? I don't ever know. I don't know.
Forget it.
Okay.
I couldn't.
Okay.
I know. I was like, it's Swati. Yeah. I don't have it in front of me. So Swati Hara.
Yeah. Is that it? Oh God.
Right?
Someone's going to email you and say, y'all are idiots.
Well, I'm pulling it out of my memory, so I don't have it in front of me.
No. So, okay. So
fluent
this is
in that.
Sacral chakra. This is the second one, sacral, and it's connected to the sweetness of life. That's just the way I always think about it, like that. And it's very much about desire and pleasure and emotions. Your sexuality is connected to this, your creativity, it's like this need of the longing and the nourishment, and there's very much I don't know. I just like desire, passion,
and this is where I feel like this one is feminine, right? It's like the womb, the sexual centers, that passion, that desire, that kind of that fierce femininity where it's like, I want something and I'm going to get it, and I'm going to I can create life inside of me in this center. Like
that's right.
I can, literally grow a baby and all of that. I mean, that's in that center.
Yes.
Life is in that center.
And it's, the feminine aspect, it's the water element. So there's a flowy nature to it for sure. When it's when it's dysfunctional, or when it's out of balance or unhealthy, or in a state of, dysfunction of some kind, it can definitely manifest itself as in your sexual organs. So a lot of times people, if they have sexual problems or impotence, or even premature ejaculation or ovary issues, any kind of things that do with the urinary tract, all that is associated with that part of the body in the physical form. So your womb, your genitals, your bladder, your lower back, all of that area. So that's the physical aspect. Now, if it shows up in kind of the emotional aspects of it, there you could definitely we haven't even talked about how it shows up in addictions. It can actually, each one has its own addiction thing too, but I don't know if you want to.
Oh, well, I was just, you can mention, because I was just either thinking with an imbalance, either that can lead to sex addiction.
Yes.
Or on the flip side, celibate or low libido.
Yeah.
Opposite ends of that pendulum swing.
Yeah. Even a loss of all those things, a loss of appetite for food and sex and life, and just feeling that deadness of your senses.
Numb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot, some of this stuff, any kind of traumas or abuses that have to do with that too, from any kind of childhood or even as an adult, it can also be kind of held in that space as well. So, I don't know, there's, boundaries a little bit. I know that's more of the solar plexus, but just even having some emotional insensitivities or poor boundaries around that can be connected to it. But really and truly, I would say the best thing to do for healing that is going to be movement therapy, because it's about the flowing of all that, and you're not having it be so rigid and stagnant. So, learning what healthy pleasures are, to me, I think we both laugh and say sacral chakra, that's kind of our favorite, because that is how so much of how we set up our life is to try to keep that as healthy as possible. And some people are more prone to a certain chakra than others, maybe, so.
Yeah. I was gonna say, well, cause I've had a lot of trauma there and a lot of, I had endometriosis, and there's a lot of loss related for me to, my nephew who passed, who I was the caretaker of.
Yes.
So there's that motherly energy that showed up as endometriosis, that showed up as, carrying a lot of weight in that area for protection. And so I think I devote myself to that, balancing that out so much, because I lived so long disconnected, my sexuality shut down, everything, pleasure shut down, everything. I was just numb and asleep for life. And so I'm come hell or high water, that sucker is going to be balanced. I'm not going back to that place. I want that to stay open, and I want that to be active and like you said, swimming, flowing, movement. movement there.
And the movement piece makes me think of the emotions. I mean, really and truly, when there's an emotional expression, when you feel the freedom to express yourself emotionally and you don't try to contain that or repress that, then you're knowing you're allowing that space to open up for you. So, I mean, so much of like the work that you do is about helping people connect to what healthy emotional release is, because I mean, it definitely, I think that's the point of all of this work, and why I think chakras and energy centers are important is because if you do have physical ailments, if you are trying to heal some of these things we're talking about, this is an amazing way to go about healing these things without traditional medicine, by addressing the emotional component, by addressing the old trauma that might still be in your body, by noticing how you handle your emotions. Like, that's what we're trying to say, is that all those things affect you on a physical level, and that it's not separate. Right. You don't compartmentalize that. I mean, I know this is like you preach this, but how beautiful that we can actually show it, and that it actually in an energetic realm be able to like connect all the dots together. That's why we do this.
I mean, totally. I'm just like, and the body is just so wise.
Yeah.
Like, I just keep thinking, like, it's wisdom. It's knowing what it needs to come into balance, and healing is just like unbelievably powerful.
I know.
Thank you for saying all that. Like, it's just, for me, that is what I live and breathe and teach. And sometimes I forget to reiterate it, but it's like, this is why we do what we do, because for this reason. Okay. Take us into the solar plexus, to the third.
Yes.
The yellow center.
I know, the solar plexus. This is where we get our sense of power and sense of self. This is right there at that, and we should have talked about exactly where these are. So I said the perineum and the base of the spine for the first one. The second one is 2 inches below the belly button. Okay. So that's the sacral chakra. And then the solar plexus is 2 inches above the belly button. And so this is our sense of personal power and self-will. And it is connected to the fire element. So it is just power, right? And so personal power, self-esteem, purpose, desire, will. It's like the part of us that wants to take action. And sometimes when it's in a place of unhealth, I always think about it having 2 little fists ready to fight,
totally,
because it's like, it's the warrior part of us. It's the part of us.
I was going to say, it's the courageous one, the person, the part of us that takes action, the part of us that gets into motion, the part of ourselves that moves forward with momentum and courage. And you're right. When it's out of balance, it can be workaholism.
Yes.
It can be
anger.
That point where I was gonna say, like, outburst, rage. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a lot of energy.
It's a lot of energy. And so therefore it's very much connected to your adrenals. It's connected to your pancreas, your digestive tract, your liver, your gallbladder. I mean, like all that area there. So if you had noticed any kind of ailments or issues with that, it could be very much connected to some of that energy that we're talking about, where it can be like some of that anger, or a lack of motivation, or a lack of action, or too much action, too much trying to be in charge or in control or dominant or overly aggressive. Right. I mean, so it's so funny. We haven't even really talked about this, but each one of these energy centers, there's an excess of energy or a deficient in the energy. And the goal is to bring balance. So it'll manifest itself in either one when it's in.
I was gonna say, like, either side of the pendulum swing.
Yeah.
Okay. For time's sake, I'm going to rush us through the last 3, the last 4.
Yeah.
So let's go into the heart
chakra. It is green. It's connected to air. It is all about, obviously, love and harmony and peace and laughter. It's obvious, we were talking about physical ailments. I notice a lot of times when somebody has their like kind of bent over. Like,
I was going to say, like, bent over. Totally.
Yeah. And so you can see when somebody kind of has that hunch, there's usually, not always, it's connected to maybe a heart chakra being kind of closed, a protective energy.
I was going to say protecting, like totally like creating almost like a, like bringing the heart in, a sunken heart,
Yes.
so that it isn't vulnerable.
Yeah.
Being
Circulation
broken, like a broken heart.
Yes. Oh yeah. Grief, of course, all that kind of stuff. But any kind of pains in the chest, circulatory issues, asthma can be connected to this. Shortness of breath, it's all connected to lung stuff as well. So yeah, I mean, it's as far as like, this is an area of not only love of others, but love of self, right? So self-acceptance is huge here. Self-love is here. Fear of relationships or fear of rejection, or constant criticism, being clingy and jealous, like all these kind of energies around that. And obviously when you're in health, there's joy, there's compassion, there's empathy, so that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I would say the best way to heal that, just do kind of the self-love practices, right? Doing that inner child work.
Totally.
I mean, really, there's
really
no breathing exercises. I would say breathing exercises would be pretty huge for that.
Yeah.
Just kind of that
100%. Yeah.
Stuff.
Heart opening, working the lungs out. Yeah.
Okay. And then the one we were talking about.
Throat.
The purification, the throat chakras. This is the element of sound, connected to like the color blue, sometimes turquoise, communication. Yeah. When it's in health, like it's lies or gossip. It's also when it's in health, it's connected to creativity, because as you and I both know, there's life spoken with the words of the mouth, right? And like we speak.
Yeah. I was going to say
existence.
Totally. Like our word, our words are creative agents.
That's right.
And so it really is the truth center.
Yeah.
Like it really is about speaking our truth, using our voice, speaking up, like kind of what we talked about last month, being impeccable with your word. But it can manifest in all kinds of different issues, hormonal imbalances, thyroid imbalances. Like that's a big one for women, thyroid, hypothyroid stuff coming up, closed throat, strep throat, any of that kind of stuff definitely is going to show up.
And, I have real bad TMJ. So I've always had throat chakra stuff, but like anything that has to do with the jaws, the neck, the shoulders, it's not just here. Right. So just being mindful of like ears, nose, throat, mouth, all that connection there.
Isn't there like a child song about that?
Yeah. But it's really about self-expression, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's like how we express ourselves, our need to be heard, our need to speak, that's all connected to this throat chakra kind of energy.
Yeah. And honestly, like singing is really powerful for healing this chakra. Even if you have a terrible voice or can't carry a tune, just getting that sound current, chanting. This is why I love like mantra and chanting, singing, any of that, like getting some motion inside of that. Even just screaming into a pillow, like just liberating that current, liberating that voice is really powerful for this area too.
Well, when it's in health, there's a resonance in their voice. They're really good listeners, right? And there's like communication. They don't talk too much. They don't talk too loud. They don't have a baby voice. They don't have, it's like there's not a weak, small voice. And one time, I think just recently, you and I were at a restaurant and I was like, man, that guy is talking so freaking loud. His throat chakra is overdeveloped. It's like,
totally.
It's so funny. It's like you have a good
settle
sense,
down.
Good sense of what your resonant, like matching the room. Anyways, so
all
right, so chakra, and then
okay, so let's go third eye.
Yeah. So this is right here in the brow point, and it's connected to the color indigo. It's about intuition. It is about imagination. It is about wisdom. It's very a sense of discernment. There is just a real powerful sense of truth, I believe, that goes on, like a knowingness. And then, of course, the opposite of that would be illusion and fantasy and getting yourself all kind of going into like unhealthy land and all that kind of state.
Right. Right.
I would even think if you've got nightmares or headaches or vision problems or
migraines.
Yes. Yeah. And so anything that has to do with that, it's really connected to self-reflection. Establishing a real sense of a personal identity is also connected to this. So having a really good imagination, being able to have a good memory, to think abstractly or symbolically, able to visualize, but I mean, anytime you're trying to create something for the future, or if you don't know what's next, I would say that's where you would want to focus on so that you can see what's possible, even though it's not happening yet, I
was going to say, like, whenever I think of that center, it's like seeing the unseen.
Yeah.
Like knowing the unknown, see what you see, know what you know, like on a level that you're like, how would I even know this? Or how could I see this? It hasn't happened yet, but it is this like vision ultimately.
So meditating, listening to music, anything that helps activate the colors and creativity. So, and then last but not least, the seventh chakra,
our crown chakra.
The crown chakra. So it's kind of like above the head in this field here, top of the head. It's very much connected to the element of thought. And so there's a violet or a white light connection to that. And like the function of understanding the bigger, it's like the vastness, knowledge and bliss and a transcendental consciousness, like the oneness aspect, the infinite, the,
like connected to spirit, like open to the heavens, to the spiritual realm. Like there's that almost like the veil is really thin. And so there's that availability to that connection, that spiritual connection,
enlightenment
outside the body.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, and then, there's, I'm just trying to think about, I would say like maybe when it's unhealthy, there could be something to do with depression, just having, if you're feeling alienated or confused or something like that, being able to like, your ability to perceive and to analyze and to like have an open mind. Just, there's some aspect of awareness, I think, that is connected to that as well. So, and then as far as like physical, how it might show up physically, I think it's more just about just being able to, like, it's this part of the head of the body, it's just, if you're feeling your emotional oppression, then that's how it would show up versus any other organ. But
dizziness,
yes.
There's just kind of this almost like I gather like a airy, kind of like flighty, kind of like there's no legs, there's no roots, there's no grounding. It's just kind of like, so this is like, have you ever met those people that are just like, oh my God, she's so airy. She's so like just in the clouds. Would be something that we would say. That would be like overdeveloped. Crown chakra.
And then on the
can't
flip
quite
side,
get into reality.
The flip side would be that they would be like massive, like, there's like rigid belief systems, like spiritual addiction, or like some sort of cynicalness around, it can all over intellectualize everything, like that kind of stuff would be so
good.
All right. Yeah, that's about it. We can keep going.
No, I know. Totally. Well, and I think that's just a helpful, like, baseline for understanding that each of us have these amazing energy centers in the body that you can measure. There are people that are trained to work on these centers, to balance them, to redirect energy, to get it flowing again, to get them spinning again. And it really does affect your overall wholeness, your overall like holistic health. And again, if we think about how our bodies are so wise and that they contain the answers that we're seeking, it can be found inside of the energetic body. Like this is a way that our body communicates with us and shows us signals and signs and clues as to where we need to give some attention, where we need to release and let go, what still needs some healing. And so again, if we go back to that roadmap analogy, and just knowing that it is literally a highway system. Like if you ever look at like an acupuncture chart, you see all these lines running up through the body and going around the head and going down the other side of the body. And there's millions of these highways in the body. And this is what is inside of us that's operating all the time, whether we've known it or not. And it's like a cheat sheet. Once you start to gain awareness and learn more about it. So if, like I said, if this is like kind of making you curious or you love it and you're geeking out, there's a fabulous book that I'll recommend that's called Eastern Mind, Western Body, or is it, Eastern Body, Western Mind? Do you know? I think it's Eastern Body, Western Mind, but it talks about the chakras. It's a real thick book, but you can grab it on Amazon, but it walks through the Eastern and the Western. Like it's basically taking this Eastern principle and speaking it through the language of our Western culture or Western mind so that you can get it and grasp it, or it's not so just out there, like it gives it some tangible feet to hang on to, handlebars to hand on to. So check that out. Eastern Body, Western Mind, fabulous resource. But Lindsley, thanks for having this awesome conversation.
I know. And
I feel like it's way overdue.
It is overdue. And you know what? It's so beautiful to introduce it to people. And I would encourage people to reach out to see if they could find an energy medicine type person in their area. If they are curious, just to even see what that process would be like, to even have their own energy body kind of brought into a balanced state, and just notice for yourself. That's really the only way you learn this stuff, is actually to kind of practice it and give yourself permission to like try something that may be foreign or unknown, and trust that this is this beautiful body that God gave us, and the way it all works together is such a gift to us. It's nothing to be afraid of just because we don't know it, Oh,
that's good. Amen to that, sister. Mm-hmm. Ooh, well, y'all, thank you for joining Lindsley on yet another fun, candid conversation that really was like a little mini class in and of itself. So thanks for that. But I am so excited because I just have so many special guests coming up for the rest of this month that I'm kind of already geeking out about. So make sure to tune in next week for the 3rd episode in our series on body wisdom. And as always, share this episode, share it to your story on Instagram or Facebook, tag us, tag me, tag Lindsley, or message us and share like what you got out of this. If you have questions, we are always enjoying that feedback, and it's just nice to know what is hitting home. So definitely give us some love on the social channels. Almost got a little lispy there.
Throat chakra, throat chakra.
I know. Okay. I know. Yeah, we start being really annoying with this. No. All right. That concludes this lovely episode, but I'll be with you next week. So remember, until then, that the purpose of life is to be grateful, to be great, and to be full. I'll see y'all next week. Bye. Hey y'all, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you got some amazing nuggets to take home and start implementing into your life. And if you're looking for the show notes and links, head on over to maryhyatt.com/show. And if you loved it, why not bring your girlfriends along this journey of becoming fully alive with you? Just give a quick share of this episode to your social channels and enjoy those debriefing convos with your besties. Thanks again, and I can't wait to connect with you next week.